Hey, everybody. Welcome to Called Up the Prospects podcast presented by wonderful Pistachios. I am Chris Peters of FloHockey, joined as always by my co host, Cam Robinson of Elite Prospects. I am coming to you live from St. Louis, the beautiful Marriott here down the street from the Frozen Four. We're not going to talk Frozen Four today because it's happening, and then you'll listen to the podcast and everything will have already happened. But we are going to talk about a lot of great prospect things. Before we do that, I got to check in with my co-host, Cam. How are you today? What's going on? I'm sure you're busy as ever these days.
Busy as ever, yeah. Trying to break some scoops and excited for the WHL lottery tonight. Who's going to get Maddox Schultz? Obviously, looking forward to the Frozen Four. I'm jealous that I'm not in St. Louis with you for this. I'm hoping I'll be there next year, which I believe it is in Vegas. So I might just time that out nicely to pop in for next year's Frozen Four.
Yeah, I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of credential requests for next year's Frozen Four in Vegas. And the Frozen Four is a good time. If you've never been, highly recommend. I actually went to my first Frozen Four in St. Louis back in 2007, saw a young Jonathan Taves and young TJ Oshie get bounced a little earlier than they were hoping that year. I think Ben Bishop was in that. There's a lot of NHL players. And then that was won by Michigan State, who we thought might be here, but they're not. But as I mentioned, the games will happen today. You'll know who's in the championship game on Saturday. You can go listen to our preview from last week on Called Up the Prospects podcast, where we went in depth on the Frozen Four. We will have some college hockey talk today, got some updates to provide, but we're really going to focus on one of the most exciting developments in the prospect world, and that is Ivan Demidov coming over earlier than expected from SKA in St. Petersburg, SKA, if you're hip with it, and they that is going to be a huge story because he is now eligible to play in the playoffs. He signed his entry-level contract. So Cam and I are going to talk about that. But before we do, want to send a quick thank you to our sponsors, wonderful Pistachios. Get snacking, get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Wonderful Pistachios. We are always enjoying that as we get ready for the Frozen Four here, where I'm going to need to have that protein. But we're also getting ready for the Stanley Cup playoffs. And there's going to be a lot more intrigue if you are a fan of the Montreal Canadiens. Cam, we saw the news this week. Ivan Demidov released from SKA, and that was a bit of a surprise because those contracts tend to end later in the spring, and they don't usually let them out early. He was also eligible to play for their U20 or their VHL team. And so that they have multiple minor leagues teams, essentially, that he could have played for. But SKA lets him out. What, if you are a Montreal Canadiens fan, is this Christmas come early for you?
It is, absolutely. And I know that nobody was really expecting this, but if you follow Elite Prospects, if you are hip to what we got cooking over there, is that last year before the draft, is that Gold Star, who reps a ton of Russian prospects and Russian players, they did their own little kind of mini training camp and had those games. You remember that, Chris? And we had our guy Sean Shapiro was on the scene down there in Florida for that, and he talked to Demidov, and he told him straight up that he's like, I'm going to come over to Montreal at the end of my KHL season. And so you could have taken that, been like, because his contract didn't expire until June 1. It's like, well, if he was going to wait for his KHL deal to expire, then he wouldn't be coming over and playing with Montreal in all likelihood. So we had that, over almost a year ago now, that he was intending to come and play in Montreal at the end of the 2024-25 season. And lo and behold, they got him out of his deal. When I say they, I mean the Habs obviously had nothing to do with it, because NHL teams are not allowed to negotiate with KHL teams. That has to be through the representatives. Player has to buy himself out of any deal. And we'll talk about Alexander Nikishin in Carolina and his situation, how that differs a little bit too. But very, very excited to see Demidov playing in Montreal. I love that they slipped in the Conn Smythe bonus into the ELC there too. I think it's $500,000 extra if he takes home the Conn Smythe. I love that, right? That's good stuff. That's the good stuff right there. But he's a special player. He's a special player, and I think that he is prepared and situated well here to transition pretty seamlessly into the NHL offensively anyways.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about, really, the hype is one thing. jumping into a team that, it looks like the Habs, they haven't officially clinched their spot in the Stanley Cup playoffs, but it seems like there's very little doubt that that's going to be the case here at this point. What do we think about him coming in and the kind of impact he can make on that roster? That's the thing where I know he's a great player. I know he's going to be a really special player down the road. And we've seen tremendous performances from him. And in the KHL playoffs, and Roman Rotenberg has been very effusive in his praise of this young player. And there were a lot of people that weren't sure how much he actually liked the young player based on some of his usage earlier in the year. But he said he was their best forward in the playoffs. And that's usually not a good sign if the youngest guy on your team is your best forward in the playoffs. But in a lot of cases, the minutes bore that out. He played a pretty significant role. But now he's got to transition to North American Pro Hockey. Not only does he transition North American Pro Hockey, he comes in at the heaviest, most chaotic, and most difficult time of the year in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Can we expect him to be able to make an impact for this team in the postseason?
I think like anything other than, anything less than a goal per game and 2 points per game should be like a wild disappointment for him down the stretch here. Just kidding, Montreal fans. Settle that. We'll cool it. Chris, you nailed it, right? Like this is going to be a transition. He's still a kid, right? He's still a teenager. The KHL is a high quality professional league, but it doesn't have the same type of nitty gritty, tough to get space like the NHL does, or like the AHL does,
right,
for that matter. So now a lot of people will just watch highlight packs of this kid and see the jaw-dropping one-on-one moves, the highlight reel goals, and think that that's, the entirety of his game is he's all show and no dough. And I think that this year he has really developed a keener sense of when it's appropriate to try those jaw-dropping moves and when it's, hey, I don't have support from my mates who can drive through the middle and pull back that defensive scheme to allow me the space to do this. I don't have support so I can make that play and then dish it over. I'll just make a little move and I'll shoot from out high. I'll chip and I'll chase. I'll go get in there. I'll bang. He has some translatable skills that he's developed this year. And I'm not sure we can give credit to Ska because for, half the season, he was buried in the lineup and wasn't getting opportunities. So maybe that did force him to learn how to play a little bit more translatable to the NHL scheme. So what he accomplished over there, though, I think, 49 points, the all-time record for teenagers in the KHL while playing limited minutes for the vast majority of the season, not getting top power play time. Ridiculously impressive, better than Kaprizov and Kuznetsov and Tarasenko and Mishkov and all those guys. He outkicked them all. And we've seen what Mishkov has done this year, stepping over as a first-year player in a similar, role that I expect Demidov will get. He'll get offensive zone start times. He'll get to play with offensive players. He'll see some power play time. Now it is, there's no time to really ease him in. So I do think that fans should have a muted expectation. But I think the flashes will definitely be there, and then we'll see that he usually doesn't need a lot of time and space to turn a flash into some production too. So I do think he'll put some points up on the board.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you that he's got enough there. I think that his physical strength is a big benefit. I think it's a separating factor for him. He's pretty sturdy on his skates. He's hard to knock off the puck. He played more meaningful minutes in more of the games in the postseason. And you look at kind of some of the numbers that he did put up. I mean, there were games that he played over 20 minutes in a regulation game as a forward, which is great to see. In terms of the raw points in the KHL, he was above everybody. Kaprizov, Michkov, all of them. I do think I often will look at the points per game just to kind of try to get a better sense. He played 65 games, and as you mentioned, a lot of games where he was playing a couple of minutes, 30. So how much can we really go into that? But his points per game ratio is below that of Kaprizov and Michkov. But at the same time, like we said, what he did this year and the tear that he went on, especially through December, because the Montreal Canadiens brass went and visited him in December, and they basically, were just kind of checking in. And it was kind of a surprise thing that, a lot of teams hadn't really, they have had contact with players over there, but to actually see a GM, Vinny Lecavalier was there, Nick Bobrov, who's from St. Petersburg, was there, their head scout. And he went on an absolute tear after that visit. And you're like, oh, this is a guy, he's so motivated to play. in the NHL. Now, he did say, like, the thing is he said all along, I'm coming, I want to be there. But until that happens, until he's here and under contract, there's always that seed of doubt, especially because of some of the global situation here, that, like with the politics and everything else that are kind of ongoing. So that's a bit of a tricky situation, as well. But now he's here. And so you've gotten that out of the way. That's the bonus. To me, I don't expect him. I do expect him to have some points, but I think, anybody that says he's going to make Montreal appreciably better in the playoffs, I think is probably going to be underwhelmed by that. Montreal, however, their secondary scoring needs a boost. And I think he can provide that if you give him the right minutes, if you give him the right deployment, if you give him the right line meets, there's potential there. But I think the most important thing that is happening is that he's going to get NHL games this season. He's going to get a taste of it. And that sets him up way better for next year. And that's one of the things that I think is most important about kind of where we're at right now and what's happening with this team. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about, Tam, is not just Demidov, but Montreal as a whole at this point. You think about the young core that they've put together, and you think about the guys that are there. And there are some guys that, like, unfortunately, like David Reinbacher's hurt again. And there's all these different kind of things that, but there is Slavkovsky. There is Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki who've been there. There is Caden Gooley. There is, you've even gotten, I think, Jakub Dobesh has overperformed, and could be a real find for them as well. It feels like when you look at rebuild packages, Montreal's has really come together nicely. They're not, I don't think it's done. There's more pieces they're going to need. But how well does this set them up now, knowing that Demidov is in the mix, knowing that you're giving him that? I mean, next year should be no one expected them to make the playoffs this season, yet here they are. And now you've got Demidov and you've got, Marty St. Louis with another year of experience and now playoff experience. I mean, I feel like Montreal is set up great for the long term here.
Are they ever, right? Ken Hughes has done a tremendous job on a quick rebuild. And, you name those guys off, right? Slavkovsky, Caulfield, Suzuki up front, already there. Lane Hudson going to win himself a Calder, looking like he's going to be a superstar on the blue line, right? Now you've got Demidov, potential superstar up front. I love seeing Suzuki put up, what has he got, 88 already? First guy since Alexei Kovalev to drop 80 plus. It's been forever since the Habs have had like true high production forwards. And now they're going to have a few. Like, I'm still not ready to say that Cole Caulfield doesn't have a 50-goal season under his belt one of these days too. So like, what they've got cooking, and if Slavkovsky can find his way as like that big power unicorn, they're going to have almost all their boxes checked. And then they got Jacob Fowler coming too, right? They've probably got their stud number one coming up the pike here too. And they're all arriving. They're all coming in at similar times here, which is what you need. They're going to be cheap for a little bit. It's going to allow them to pay their big guys, and they're going to push up, and they're going to have to make some amendments, but the cap's going to rise. I love what Montreal's got cooking right now. I think they're doing a great job in drafting and developing, identifying talent, getting it over. Like the fact, I did rip them for not taking Mishkov, the year before and taking Reinbacher. I understood why they did it, but then to go out and to have the cojones to take Demidov at 5, layup for me, but not everybody, right? 4 teams passed on him, 3 really. And so to go out there and no hesitation and pull the trigger on him, I love that. And I expect they'll be active in the market this summer too, looking to pull in a free agent or two, or, try to bolster that team because like you said, this is a great time for them to be injecting all this youth into their lineup because, now they're all of a sudden a surprise playoff team on the way up, right? All these guys are going to continue to get better for years and years and years. And so if you support them with the right veteran pieces, there's no reason that this can't be a lengthy competitive window for them, a true cup window that could be around for multiple years. And that's what you play the game for, right? And that's why fans pay the money to go see the games. And so, yeah, it's good for business to have Montreal back in the playoffs and back being like a legitimate threat for the next few years here and to maybe make some noise in deep playoff runs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's such a tremendous time to be a Montreal Canadiens fan again. And we've seen it, and you wondered when it would come. But I mean, you mentioning Fowler, they got him under contract. Laval has been one of the best teams in the AHL this season. They've got a number of players there that could potentially help them. Logan Mailloux and others who have been there all year. Beck, and there's so many guys that are kind of these secondary players that you also need, because yes, you need the stars. That's what you need most of all. They're the hardest to get usually, but you need it's a team game. You need to find more guys that are going to fill those holes. So in the short term, we talked about the playoff, and to me, that is mostly irrelevant for this conversation about what Demidov ultimately means to Montreal. It's more about what's going to happen in the next few years. Cam, based on what we have seen from him in the KHL this season, we didn't see it last season, but what do you think is reasonable in terms of expectation of ceiling? Are we talking about perennial all-star? Are we talking about one of the elite players of the game? Are we talking about, a top-line forward, which if that is the ceiling, that is still an incredibly valuable thing to have. Based on what we have seen and all the things that he has put together in this season and what he did at his age in the KHL, where do you think the ceiling is now? Or where it's going to be, I should say.
I mean, the ceiling is an NHL superstar. Like, I think that's what it is. I think it's 100-point player. I think it's Kirill the Thrill 2.0. And I put that out there on Twitter, and not just because they're both Russian, but that he plays a similar game to Cap. And, he even compared himself to him as well, a little hybrid with him and Jack Hughes. Which I could see a little bit too, a little more playmaker. Maybe he's not going to rip off 50-goal seasons like Kaprizov does, but 35-40, and then jacking up a ton of assists too. Like he's very, very talented. He's very driven. He's already in the last 12 to 18 months stacked on a lot of strength and muscle, just to help insulate his game. He's got a power game to despite not being like the biggest player out there, and then the skills are just electric. And so I think he's also improved his foot speed, which was just average over the course of the last year too. So I think the sky's the limit for him. Is not a generational talent or anything like that. I don't expect him to be a consistent like top 2 or 3 player in the game, but he might have a glimpse of that maybe in one of his career seasons, that he could be in that conversation among the top, a Hart Trophy finalist at some point too. Like, and obviously this is just fan in the flames in Habs Nation right now, and I'm happy to do it. But it's true. I truly believe that this is one of the most gifted offensive players among like any U23. I think we had him in the top 5 on our U23 rankings. It just came out recently. Like that's how highly regarded we have him at EP.
Yeah, and I think a lot of those lists are going to have him at a pretty high level. And for me, I think I look at the career that Kirill Kaprizov is having right now, and that's, to me, like, I think, I'm not trying to say that they're the same player, but, you look at kind of the trajectory that they had, and you think that Kaprizov came over so much later than Demidov is going to be coming over. I think we're going to see him get a longer time and road and runway to be that great player. And potentially because of that will surpass what Kaprizov is. And if that happens, that is a remarkable player, a franchise-changing player for your team. That is pretty substantial. So Demidov is not the only high-end guy from SKA that, is really could be a humongous difference maker. And we're talking about Nikishin now, one of the great defensemen outside of the NHL. I think we've been talking about him as the best non-NHL defenseman in the world for years. What is the latest with him? Carolina has his rights. They've had his rights from the beginning. They got a great value in the draft from him, but they've been waiting a long time. How much more patience is going to be required, Mr. Robinson?
No more patience required. So yeah, an amazing, I believe, 3rd-round pick. I don't have his EP page in front of me right now, but yes. So from all indications, he is on his way. He has also got his way out of that contract early before the June 1st expiry date. And thank goodness too, because the things that he's done for St. Petersburg there. He was their captain. He set every record for defensemen for them, for their organization. I had even heard a rumor that he had taken less money or took a haircut so they could afford to bring Tony DeAngelo into the fold. Like, he is sacrificing. He's done everything they asked. And so to let him out early and come over to Carolina when everybody knows that's what's going to happen, he's not staying in the K. So good on Scott for getting that done. He's going to come over. Now, my understanding is that it's going to be a 2-year entry-level contract. He's 23 years old. Signed a 2-year ELC, immediately burn year 1. He's going to step into the fold, play for Carolina, and inject like a serious shot into the arm to that blue line there on already a legit cup contender. So that means 25, 26 will be the second year of that ELC, and then bang, all of a sudden he'll be an RFA at 24 years old, which is perfect for him. He can get paid immediately, because I honestly believe that Nikishin is going to step in and be a top 4 guy for them right away, and has the potential to be a top pair guy for them. He's going to be a very, very good player. And so Canes fans have been patiently waiting for this guy. He's been KHL Defenseman of the Year, twice led that league in defensive scoring. Like, he is a horse on both sides of the puck. And, for my money, I've said it for a while, is that like he has the most potential of anybody coming into a team late in the year here, whether it's from Russia or the NCAA. He has the most potential to really make an impact immediately because of the age, the experience, the size, and the caliber of player that he is.
Yeah, I'm very excited. I think the maturity that he plays with, the two-way value that he brings, the leadership capabilities. I agree. I think he's a top pairing all day. And is going to be a guy that is the foundation of that blue line for years to come. And patience has been required, but it will pay off in the same way that it did for Minnesota with Kirill. And I think, for me, I'm just excited to see that player transition here, because he was such a dominant force over the last couple of years in the KHL. And I think it's far exceeded any expectations of what he was going to be when he was drafted. But let's get that young man over here as quickly as possible. Let's get him into some games and let's see what he's all about, because he's looked great over the years in the KHL. All right. I want to switch gears and bring it back to some of the younger guys a little bit, because there's, we previewed the CHL playoffs a few weeks ago. We talked a little bit about Michael Misa. Well, his postseason is over already. Surprisingly, without Matthew Schaefer, Erie is able to beat Saginaw and Michael Misa. And now he's, sitting out from this kind of critical time where he can continue to build that resume. And I believe he also got injured at the tail end of that postseason run as well. So my question to you, Cam, and I don't think it's fair, I'm going to say that right off the top, but does that short postseason impact his draft stock at all? And is there anything that we should take away from it? I will say right off the hop, I haven't watched Saginaw's playoff games yet, so I don't have great insight into the performance, so to speak. But just in general, what are we thinking of his draft stock now that he's been bounced from playoffs early?
Absolutely no impact whatsoever. It was clear that he was banged up. NHL teams and scouts, they understand that he was battling through, especially in games 3 and 4. He was gutting it out, and you could tell, and he just couldn't go for game 5. My understanding is that it's not a significant or serious injury. He has been invited to the Team Canada camp in Oakville. I believe that one kicks off on Saturday, maybe. And which would be huge for Team Canada, right? To get him at the U18s. If he's healthy, I do expect he's going to be there, and he's going to be arguably the best player there. We'll see what happens with Erie. They're facing London now, and that they got a big task ahead too after knocking off Saginaw. So Matty Schaefer, if he's healthy, he might come to the U18s. But no, I don't think that the early exit is going to impact his draft stock in the least. He accomplished so much this year. He took such huge strides. I think he is pretty well a known quantity now, and the U18s will just be a nice opportunity if he's healthy to go and have one more opportunity to really shine on a big stage, which is what I fully expect he will do. And then I don't expect he'll go to the World Championships or anything like that. I know that in the past we've seen some of these younger guys, even draft eligible guys, go to the Worlds, and I don't expect that he'll be a part of that. But I do think that a nice little trip down to Texas, get some barbecue, hang out with the lads, maybe come back with a gold medal, that won't hurt either.
Yeah, I mean, Canada certainly looking like they will be the favorite, if not among the favorites, if at worst. So certainly going to be a very interesting under 18 championship, which you and I will both be at, and there's a lot more to come on that front. We will preview that tournament very soon on this here podcast once we get another look at some more of these rosters. A couple of other guys I did want to talk about Sweden a little bit as well. Sweden, both Anton Frundell and Ivar Stenberg have been named to the under 18 World Championship team. However, they are both still active with their club teams. And the Frundell's team, Djurgården, is on the cusp of elimination here. Stenberg and Frölunda are in a pretty tight series right now, which you can watch for our American subscribers on FloHockey, the entire SHL semifinal and final. Available on FloHockey, but Frundell hasn't necessarily been overly productive in the postseason, but he really did pick it up at the end of the season, putting up a lot of points. I feel like his stock, at least in the scouting world, has risen because of that. But now we're kind of seeing he hasn't necessarily made the same level of impact in the postseason with 2 points so far. As Djurgården tries to earn promotion, it looks like they may fall short based on the way their series is going here. But I know you've been. I don't think critical is the right word, but I think you've definitely been lukewarm on Frundell. How, if at all, has your opinion changed or not as we go forward here into this stage of the season, and how much could Frundell at the under 18s impact that going forward?
Yeah, so I'm really hoping that he will be there at the U18s, because this will be tournament number 4 that I've gone to trying to see him. So, last year's U18s, Holinka, World Juniors, and now here's number 4 this year's U18. So yes, let's bubble wrap him, and unfortunately I'm rooting against Djurgårdens to push up. So I'm excited to see him live. I have come around on him as the season has progressed. I just submitted a couple of reports on him from March where he had good games. He is what he is, though, in my mind. He is a power pivot who can handle okay and can shoot it really well. And he's physically mature. But I am looking forward to seeing him live and getting a firsthand look of how he can, operate in tight space and all that kind of stuff on a big stage. I do still question whether he's going to be like a top line center or if he's more destined to be like a good 2C. A guy like Anton Lundell, is kind of reminds me of that type of player who's turned out to be a very good player for Florida, buried behind Sasha Barkov, though, so he'll never get really top line opportunities. And so we'll see where Frundell goes. And if he can get those opportunities, maybe that'll be enough to push him over. But Ivar Stenberg, that whole Swedish team really has me excited too, right? With Frundell and with Stenberg, Viggo Bjork, right? They've got Sasha Boumedien's going to be there. They've got a lot of really Milton Gastrin, Jakub Wozniak. It's going to be a good team. It's going to be a really good team. And so I'm really hoping that Stenberg is going to be there as well. We got to see him at the Holinka where he torched it up there back in the summer. Really impressive player, right? Just became the most productive draft -1 player ever in SHL playoff history. And, he's an older birth date. So if you want to just look at it among U18 players, again, the most playoff points among any U18 player in SHL history. And that is nothing to sneeze at, because there has been a whole host of really, really talented players that have come through that league and played in the playoffs as U18 players. We're talking Fiala and Rasmus Dahlin and Alex Steen and Zabinajad and, all these type of guys, the Sedin twins, Leo Carlson, loads of them. And he's got more points than all those guys. So it's what he has accomplished this year has been really, really impressive. Sweden's got a really nice crop coming in 2026 too. So all those guys, really looking forward to seeing them hopefully in Frisco next week. 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, in just a few weeks away here in Frisco. And Allen, the great state of Texas, hosting yet another under 18 Worlds. And like I said, we will preview that event for you next week when we get to it, because there are going to be a lot of really interesting players and interesting names there. We hope Frundell and Stenberg are among them. Stenberg's been, kind of, at least as the lineup is set, his minutes haven't reflected this, but as the lineup is set, he's essentially been a top 6 forward, playing in top 6 situations, getting a little more sheltered, but still he's scoring goals. He's making plays. He's making guys around him look better. Really, really excited to see that player matriculate here. The last thing on this front, in terms of the players that that are kind of, or I forget what I lost my whole train of thought there, because look, I'm in this hotel room. I am completely out of sorts. I usually have my nice setup here, but anyway, I'm I'm going to move on, because I want to go even younger now, because as you mentioned today, the WHL will be having their draft lottery. And if you haven't heard the name Maddox Schultz yet, get ready to hear it a lot, because he only just turned 15, yet he is one of the very best young players in Canada. He plays for the Regina Pat Canadiens in the Saskatchewan under 18 AAA level. We just had a number of his games on FloHockey in the TELUS Cup regionals. They were playing in the Western Conference regionals, and their Western Canada regionals, and he lit it up, as he's done all season long. You just wrote a big story about Maddox Schultz as well. Tell us a little bit more about this player. Tell us a little bit more about what you've learned about him. And a very interesting thing that I did not know until I read your story was what his plans are regarding WHL exceptional status. Let's first introduce the player and get an understanding what makes this guy special.
Yeah, special is the right word. He is a special player. That Saskatchewan U18 AAA league it's the top league in the province. And he came up and played games at 13 years old, and, scored in his first game out, and then applied and was granted exceptional status to play full time as a 14-year-old this year. And he led the league in goals and assists and points, was named Rookie of the Year, was named MVP. His club took home the championship. He led the playoffs in points, I believe, with 22 and 10. A dominant player as a 14-year-old, playing up against guys that are for 4 years his senior. Incredible stuff. And so playing at, a Regina kid, playing in that program, had every opportunity to apply for exceptional status and would have been granted it, following in the footsteps of Connor Bedard and Landon DuPont, who did it in the West before him. Now, instead of that, he has opted to not apply for exceptional status and will instead be going for what we call the hybrid option now, which, because he's played U18 in his WHL draft year, which was this season, he will be permitted to play up to 34 games next year for whichever club drafts him, which is a healthy portion of the season, which is pretty cool. And something like Gavin McKenna did something similar, but he only played, I think, 16 or 18 games in his underage year. So I expect that Schultz will he will take that option, and I expect he'll play up to those 34 games. And now the interesting part too is that one of the teams in the lottery this year is Kelowna. So there's 3 teams tonight have an opportunity to win first overall. You can only move up 2 spaces. So the Edmonton Oil Kings, they have the most lottery balls in the pile, and that's thanks to a trade with Moose Jaw from a year and a half ago. So they can thank Moose Jaw for that. And then it's I'm spacing on who number 2. Oh, Regina. Regina has the second most. The Pats, who, they just handled Connor Bedard. That's his hometown team. Would be tremendous for him to get to stay close to home like that, and for the fan base and for his family. And then third is the Kelowna Rockets, who have the third likeliest chance to get him, and they're hosting the Memorial Cup next year. So I did some checking around, and when this is called an AP, when a player comes up and plays in their minor underage year, is that he would be permitted to play playoff games, or whoever Kelowna drafts will be permitted to play in the Memorial Cup with them, as long as their regular season is done with his minor league team. So as soon as that Pat Canadiens team season is done, he would be able to airlift in, if it's the Rockets, and he would get to play in the Memorial Cup next year as a recently turned 16-year-old, which would be so cool for the WHL just a marketing dream to be able to have Maddox Schultz step into that position. So I know a lot of people are really hoping that it is Kelowna. I'm sure he and his family will be happy wherever they go, but they're probably hoping that it's Regina. And then the Oil Kings are just sitting there pretty with the most balls in the lottery, being like, we'll just take this superstar if we can get him. So tonight, Thursday night, by the time you listen to this, it'll already be done and we'll know where he's heading. And I should mention one more thing too, is there's a kid out of Langley, BC, playing in the JPHL, as a 15-year-old in the U18 league there too, led his team in scoring, was second in the whole league in scoring. Liam Pugh, a very nice consolation prize for the team that doesn't win Maddox Schultz. I know a couple scouts who think Pugh might be just as good as Schultz. So a fun bit of news coming up in this young elite hockey sphere. And what are they cooking out there in the West, right? Like we got Bedard, McKenna, DuPont, Schultz, Pugh. Like it's been a gauntlet. They are really cooking something up here in the Western Hockey League of late.
Yeah, you tell me. You're out there. You're breathing the same air as these young pups out there. But and I told you this off the air too. Like when you see some of these players that we talk about in this kind of rarefied air of the Bedards and Gavin McKenna and just kind of the players that have reached this status. There's just something different about them. And when you see it in even how they handle the puck, how they shoot the puck, how they skate, the elite guys just look different. They just do. And you can see those in those just little subtleties, the purity of touch and other things like that these guys have. I've seen that with Maddox Schultz just on video from what I've watched of him. He's got that similar quantity and quality about him. And so I think that's going to be really interesting to see and see how it matriculates. We'll know by the time you listen to this podcast, we'll know who won the draft lottery. And so now you will be, if you are a fan of one of those teams, you can now get really, really, really excited about what Maddox Schultz is all about, because we're excited about what Maddox Schultz is all about. And it's going to be really fascinating. All right. We've got one more thing that I want to touch on before we go into our Beyond Belief segment, and then also our You Have to Pick One segment. And that is, the latest. We talked last week. We all, and I know everybody, expected Isaac Howard would be a member of the Tampa Bay Lightning at some point this offseason. Well, that ain't happening. Things have changed. And so it's been reported, multiple outlets, yourself included, and that Isaac Howard is returning to Michigan State next season. They're also returning Trey Augustine, Charlie Stramel. They're getting some other new players. Tyson Jugnoth, who's having a tremendous WHL postseason, is coming back to college hockey. Who started at the University of Wisconsin. There's a lot of really interesting players to surround that team with. But Isaac Howard was a guy that I think everybody thought would be coming out. What's the latest there? Do we have any additional insight into what happened? And is this another situation where we are seeing a player that could potentially make it to free agency? Because if he goes back to school August 15th of the following year, he will be eligible for free agency.
I'm very surprised by this. I was told by people on both sides of the aisle that it was going to get done. That MSU did not. They had said goodbye. That they did not expect he was coming back. And why would you? Right after Hobey Baker level season, his third year, like why would he come back? Tampa Bay, they could use a little kick like that too. But I think it came down to, cap space was an issue to sign him right away, but opportunity was a bigger issue too. Is that he wanted to get in, burn a year of his ELC, and get into NHL games right away. And Tampa Bay is cooking right now, and they don't really have a spot to slide him into. And so for him to look at that and be like, okay, so now I'm going to the AHL. Do I even have a spot next year on this team? He wanted like guaranteed. I shouldn't say he wanted, but it's been insinuated to me that he was looking to be a full-time NHL player right away. And so now instead, he can go back to Michigan State, collect his NIL money, which is going to be a whole heck of a lot more than he'd be making in the American Hockey League next season, right? He could be making $250,000 there for MSU in NIL money or more potentially. And then have the pick of the litter where he wants to go next summer for a team that will be willing to say, here you go, Ike, you got a top 9 job in our team next year. Here's your ELC, here's your signing bonus, and off we go. And so, yeah, I think at this point, I would be very surprised to see him play for Tampa Bay. I mean, I'm surprised he's going back to MSU, but I think that it's, there's a chance that they package him up and they move his rights in a deal, or they just sit and they take the compensatory pick at the end of the day and they kind of dust their hands of it.
Yeah, it's always a tough situation, especially as you're kind of getting into the postseason. You're in a cap situation. There are all these other factors that come into play about whether you're going to use a player or not. I think the other thing that I'll just speak to quickly is, is this ultimately the best thing for Isaac Howard's development? I mean, I would say, like, in the end, it's probably not going to hurt him too badly. We expect the NCAA to actually be better next year than it was this year, just because of the influx of talent that's coming in. So there are going to be a lot of challenging games ahead. You get the opportunity. Adam Nightingale is as good as a lot of NHL coaches in terms of his pedigree, what he's done. He's going to be a guy that I think is on NHL radars. Developmentally, he got the most out of Isaac Howard. I think he'll continue to do that. The college programs have elite training. But I think if you're now the Tampa Bay Lightning, how many first-round draft picks have you had in the last several years? Well, it's him. And he's, potentially not coming. It's tough. They will get they could get the compensatory pick if there is, if he doesn't sign and he does go to free agency. There's also the option, as you mentioned, of trading him. But again, now you're looking at what's the value of that. I think, I don't think a Cutter Gauthier-esque package is in the offing for something like that. It would be something different. But that's, if you want to compare situations, you also have to remember that Cutter Gauthier was also a couple years younger than Ike Howard will be, and also a lot bigger too, which is a different story. When he did the signing, but it's really interesting to follow. We'll continue to follow it. But if you're a Michigan State fan right now, maybe you should start getting your tickets for Vegas, because that they are going to be in a year where they could have lost so much more. I was talking to somebody from Michigan State yesterday, and I don't think that this wasn't on the coaching staff or anything, but people around the program. And I don't think that before that news came out, there wasn't a lot of knowledge that was coming down the pike, at least among the people that were around it. So a big surprise in the prospect world, something that we'll be watching very closely as we go forward. But yeah, Isaac Howard, wow, a big shock for sure. All right,
Can I slip in? Can I slip in one thing?
Segment. Oh yeah, please. Let's
slip in one last thing as we were mentioning MSU there, and Trey Augustine and Ike coming back and Stramel coming back, and then Caden Lindstrom very likely to be showing up as well. They are going to be a wagon. You book your tickets. I'm going to book mine to Vegas, and I'm fully expecting to see the Spartans there next year. Disappointed to get knocked off this year at number 2, and now it's comeback time.
Yeah, next year will be just shy of 20 years since their last national championship. So there is that as well. All right. Let's get into our Beyond Belief segment. We're going to talk about some of the things that we've already talked about, but drill down into some specifics here. One of us will give a statement in terms of what is believable or beyond belief, and then we'll determine which of that is, because that was definitely a good way to say that. I don't know where my brain is right now. I'm about to get ready to go to those Frozen Four games. But anyway, Cam, let's start it off with what we talked about at the top of the show, Ivan Demidov. And my statement is, Ivan Demidov will score multiple playoff goals for the Montreal Canadiens this postseason.
Absolutely. I'm a hype man. I thrive on enthusiasm. So yes, I'm going to say that is a true statement, that Demidov is going to produce multiple goals for the Habs in their first round playoff matchup, and maybe even second round. We'll see if they can get by it. But no, I think he'll be able to generate at least 2. And then he's going to find the back of the net a couple of times there. And man, oh man, Bell Center's just going to erupt the first time he does it. And every time he does it, probably. But no, I think that's true.
All right. I'm going to say beyond belief. I think he's going to get his first NHL goal in the postseason, but I don't think he'll get much more than that. I think the adjustment is too great. And I'm also a little concerned about the Montreal's ability to compete overall once they actually get in there. I think they're going to have their hands full, in that opening round. However, I am so excited to watch them play. So I think it'll be, I want to tamp down expectations. I want to give the kid a chance to get his feet wet, get everything figured out. Let's see if he gets into the lineup and how regularly he gets into the lineup. But I'm going to say it's beyond belief for me.
Okay. I should have put the caveat that he definitely has to get offensive minutes for that to happen. So if they bury him, but
That's
that'd be
true.
silly to do. That'd be
Yeah,
silly.
but I mean, it's Marty
Silly.
St. Louis. He's going to give him minutes, right? Like he's going to give him a
Yeah.
chance, I think.
Yeah, he knows what's up. He's got those giant quads. He knows what's good. All right. For you, Chris, Isaac Howard will play for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Now, we kind of gave a little bit of a window in our thoughts already, but what do you think? You think he'll ever suit up for them?
I think this is beyond belief as well, and I think, the thing is, things can change. There's time. You never really know, and I'm not even going to rule out the. Is it a possibility that he's available to them and they mend fences in the summer? It's possible, but I think because of the wants from his side and what Tampa has to offer, I just think that there's going to be that disconnect. And as you mentioned, and this is going to be interesting, I'm going to eventually ask the AHL about this as well, is that the NIL, these guys, when they make their entry level salaries, their AHL payment is like 92.5 or 92.7. So $92,750. It's basically the smaller version of their entry level contract. And so we're talking about six figures in NIL money. And so that's the thing where it's like, okay, some of these guys will have incentive to go back, financial incentive to go back, if it's not going to diminish their development. They should always put their development first. What is going to be the best thing that gets me to the NHL and allows me to be the player that I want to be? And the next thing is, how also can I help myself, financially here? I know if I was in college making that kind of money, I would have probably been really irresponsible with it. But I think these guys have a bright future ahead of them. He is a guy that marches to the beat of his own drum, and you maybe don't ever know what he's going to do. But Ike Howard going back, I think this may have been the ship sailing on his future with the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yeah, I'm with you. And with always leaving that slight crack in the door that, like you said, that maybe they come to him back in the summer before the season starts and be like, hey, we got a spot for you in the bigs next year. Come sign, come join us, and don't prove yourself in the AHL. Maybe that gets it done. But I think that's beyond belief. I think he's gone from Tampa.
Yeah, and what a bummer too. I mean, like, it's just it just is what it is. It's unfortunate, but anyway, let's stay on this train, and we're going to go back to the Maddox Schultz train, because I think this is going to be really interesting. And I'm going to change what I wrote a little bit, just a hair, just so that it's a little bit more of a difficult kind of question. So we talked about how Maddox Schultz could play up to 34 games in the WHL next season, and very likely will with whatever team he ends up with. So my question to you is, will Maddox Schultz outscore Gavin McKenna on a per-game basis as a U16 player? McKenna had 18 points in 16 games for Medicine Hat as a U16 player in that hybrid season where he played a little bit with his prep team in the CSSHL and spent time with Medicine Hat. So Cam, Maddox Schultz will outscore Gavin McKenna on a per-game basis as a U16 in the WHL.
Whew, I mean, it's a big ask, right? He's basically got to put up like close to 40 points in those 34 games. Gav was tremendous in his shorter sprint there, but I think it's going to come down to where he lands, right? If it's Edmonton, it's like he's going to have some pieces to work with. If it's Kelowna, they are retooling in a hurry, right? Like, so they're not going to, yeah. I think, if Kelowna doesn't pick one, they're probably going to trade that pick to get some now pieces to contend for this Memorial Cup. But if they do get Schultz, they're holding on to him. So they'll have some assets for him to work with. So if he's with the Rockets, I think then yes, he can get that done. If he's in Regina, not a ton to work with the Pats right now. I'm gonna say it's beyond belief. I'm gonna hedge a little bit and just give the kid a break and not put huge expectations on him as a 15-year-old to put up. But I mean, look what Landon DuPont just did. But again, Everett's got a lot of players to work with. So no, I'm gonna stick with him. I'm sticking with it beyond belief. I love Maddox Schultz. He's very capable of doing it, but I'm not gonna put that pressure on him just yet.
Yeah, I think, you get him in this situation if, with Kelowna, whatever it may be, there's maybe that better opportunity. But yeah, I'm with you on that. A point per game at 15 years old, or over a point per game at 15 years old, especially with the kind of the inconsistency of, hey, you're not with the team full time. Mm-hmm. I think that's another thing that could potentially play with it. So that said, whether he does or he doesn't, this is a player that is going to be among the guys that we need to really be keeping a very close eye on for the next couple of years. So pretty tremendous player. I turn it back to you, my friend.
Definitely. Okay, last one up here. Alexander Nikishin will be the most impactful addition that a team will airlift in. And we're talking, we got Ryan Leonard and Gabe Perreault and Demidov. We're going to have Zibuiam coming out too. But Nikishin will be the one to infuse the most jump into his team.
I'm going to say that is accurate. And I do believe that because of the one thing, yes, he's got to make the transition to North America, but this guy is a pro's pro. He does everything the right way. He's incredible in the hockey sense department. He's physically strong. He's built for this style of hockey. He's built for the style that Carolina plays as well. And that to me, excuse me, that to me is the real key here, is that he can fit in. And I do think he'll get reasonable minutes. I think he can improve their depth defensively. I do think that there's, you think about the guys that have come in over the years, and, Cale Makar was much younger. Brock Faber was younger. Some of these guys that come in and he's a man. Like Nikishin is a man. And to me, I think that he makes them better. And I also think that he is going to be a significant piece for them in the long term. So one of the best defensemen outside of the NHL for the last couple of years. Let's get him into the NHL. Let's see what he can do. I think he's going to cook.
Love it. I agree wholeheartedly. True statement. And I do love Zibuiam too, but yes.
I agree. Like, I think Zeev is, based on what we're seeing from him, there's a real chance. And I think if you're a Minnesota Wild fan, you're shouldn't be rooting against him, but you probably are to try and lose in the Frozen Four to get there just a hair sooner. Because I think he'll be there the second it's all over and done with. All right. Last order of business is you have to pick one segment. And this is, you pick an either or an or kind of situation. And this one's a little different because I'm going to put you in the player's shoes, Cam. You are you're going for, you're at this stage of your game, under 15 player, or your 15-year-old season. You have a decision to make. Do you select the route that Gavin McKenna and Maddox Schultz are taking with this hybrid route, or would you prefer to take on the full bore of exceptional status like a Landon Dupont or a Michael Misa or Connor Bedard and the others that go down the list? If you're in their shoes, and you're one of the elite players, what do you choose?
And it's tough, right? I think this one, it's going to sound like a cop-out, but it's so specific to the individual to make that call, right? Is it physical maturity, right? Are you able to withstand the rigors of playing in the CHL as a 15-year-old? I think it's worked for several players, obviously, to come in and be exceptional status guys. But I would, I'm gonna pick a side, and I'm gonna say hybrid. Is that I would go hybrid because I, as a parent now too, is that one more year or half year close to home with your family. You don't need to take off at 14 or 15 and go play if you don't have to. So for a kid like Schultz to be able to stay at home, be with his family, play with his local AAA team there, win championships, put up record-breaking numbers, still get the taste, still get those 30 games in the dub, and then move full-time as a 16-year-old, I think is a pretty perfect scenario. And that's probably the way I would, advise if my kid ever got there, or a client of mine, is that I would look at that. But it is definitely such an individual decision that every family has to look at, and every player and agent has to consider is what is going to be best for development for this player at this time. But I do think that you got your whole life to grow up and live at billets and be on the road and all that. Is that one more year close at home, I think, is important.
Yeah, absolutely, Cam. Like I think I agree with a lot of that. And I think if I were in this position, that's, I would probably lean that way, especially as a parent. Now, if I put myself in the kid's shoes, the reason that I'm going to go opposite of you is not because I disagree, because I actually think that there are tons of merits to patience, to taking the deliberate path. The one thing I will say that the difference is that in order to be granted exceptional status, it's not just about your playing ability. They also are looking at your physical maturity, your emotional maturity, where you are as a person. And if you are a player that was able to gain exceptional status, it means that you're probably a bit more mature than your peers. You're probably a bit more advanced, and you have exhausted what you can do at the additional level or the other levels that you're at. I know as a parent, losing a kid at 15 to move far away would be really hard for me. And there it happens even at younger ages in some of these non-traditional hockey markets where players are looking for better opportunities and to play more consistently. So that's always something that I think about as well. But I do think the one thing that the CHL does so well with this particular thing, they've hit on pretty much the vast majority of players they have given exceptional status to. And I would trust that process just enough to say, okay, I am ready for that. If they say I'm ready and I feel ready, I will go that route. I think both paths have great merits. And as we said, not one size fits all in development. And that's the thing that I think is always important. Every player has to make the decision for themselves. I would think if I felt emotionally ready to leave home and to do those things, and the CHL says, yes, you're ready to go, then I would probably take them up on it. But I think there's so many merits to both sides. And I'm glad that you shined a light on that is very well in terms of the hybrid route. And I'm really excited to see how it worked out. Obviously, it's worked out so far for Gavin McKenna. He hasn't been drafted in the NHL yet, but he's going to be a guy that very likely goes number one next year. And we'll see what he does next year. But I mean, he's gotten some great years of his junior hockey, and he got a great head start. So it certainly didn't hold him back any to do that route. So lots of good stuff there, Cam. Before we get out of here, tell us what's coming up on Elite Prospects.
Yeah, like you said, I dropped that Schultz piece today. It's got a lot of good tidbits in there if you guys are interested in that level and sticking in that level. Some excellent work by Mitch Brown, David St. Louis, Lauren Kelly. We did our first ever OHL draft rankings, which was really cool experience for them. And we'll be doing one for the West and the Q as well, too. So EP is branching out and scouting some of these kids before they get into junior. We had Sean Shapiro at the USA U14, U15 national championships there last week as well. And we saw Matt Cullen kid Joey Cullen scored the game winner and a hat trick in the finals. So really cool to start scouting these kids a little bit earlier. And now we can have scouting reports running for years and years before they're even drafted. We have our big scouting meeting this weekend for the NHL draft for the 2025. So look for that video will be coming out early next week, and then our rankings as well. So yeah, lots of fun stuff. And then we got U18s. So lots of stuff cooking. Yeah. This is the fun time.
Yeah, U18s will absolutely be a blast. We'll both be there, and we will preview that for you guys next week right here on this very podcast. We'll hope to have most of the rosters at least partially known, and then we will definitely get you ready for that, and then we'll have great coverage. That's all going to be coming up on FloHockey. For those of you that listen to this on this weekend, hey, Gabriel Landeskog's coming back, and he is going to start that comeback trail in the AHL. And if you didn't know already, the AHL is streamed on FloHockey. So make sure you are staying tuned. We should have a few announcements whenever it is that he does play. We expect to be all over that. So very excited. First time in 3 years that Landeskog will hit the ice, and he'll do it first in the AHL to make sure he's ready to go if the Avalanche can call on him in the playoffs. So we're excited about that. As I mentioned earlier, the SHL playoffs are underway, and the semifinals and finals will be carried on FloHockey for our U.S. subscribers, streaming globally starting in a little over a week now. Under a week is the ECHL Kelly Cup playoffs. Right on the heels of that will be the AHL Calder Cup playoffs with the opening round best of 3 series before we get it broken down. 23 teams make the playoffs in the AHL, and so you will be able to follow that on FloHockey. Stay tuned for announcements for free streams and other things like that as well. We'll also have plenty of coverage of the NCAA Frozen Four as it goes to its completion, and then also getting ready for the junior hockey playoffs, and some of which are already underway. So make sure you're staying tuned to FloHockey for that. And Cam, before we get out of here, I don't want to end on a sad note, but the hockey world was rocked this week. A couple of, great men, Greg Millen, and yesterday, honestly, a huge shock to me and to so many. Ray Shero passing away. And Ray Shero, of course, was the general manager of the Pittsburgh Penguins and the New Jersey Devils, was working with the Minnesota Wild, and it was only 62 years old, just far too young to go. But one of the absolute great characters of the game, one of the nicer people, a person that believed in a lot of people, and also personally for me, a huge thrill for me when I went out on my own, I was doing, subscription services. He was one of the first people that subscribed that I was like, oh my gosh, like people in the industry are reading and he paid for the subscription, and he was reading the articles. You could see he was reading it. I was like, if somebody like that is valuing what you do, it gives you a little, I mean, you're in this industry. When we hear from people about what we do, especially at that level, it means a ton. And I'm not saying like I didn't know Ray Shero very well, but I admired him from afar. And the one thing that hear from everybody is that you always knew what he was thinking. You didn't have to guess; he would tell you. So it's very sad. Obviously, a legend within USA Hockey as well. Worked on a number of national teams, but definitely wanted to send out condolences to his family, his sons Chris and Kyle. Guys that are around our age and younger, and just you feel so much for them and for their family. But just a really remarkable man that will be sorely missed in the hockey world. So I didn't want to end the podcast without acknowledging Greg Millen and Ray Shero, who had a bit more of that personal connection too. But yeah, just a beautiful life lived, and a tremendous legacy left as well for both of those men. But Cam, that's going to do it for this week's show, pal. Really, thanks for hopping on and bringing all of your insights. And we want to also remind you that the Called Up the Prospects podcast is brought to you by wonderful Pistachios. We thank them for their support of this show. Make sure you support them as well. And also, subscribe, rate, review the podcast. We've seen growth. We're seeing more people checking it out. We're seeing more people passing it around. Stay tuned for social clips as well. We thank everybody that listens to this show. Huge thanks to Ever for producing. My thanks to my co-host, Cam Robinson. Thanks for stopping by once again, my friend, and having some fun. We will talk Under 18 World Championship next week on Called Up, the Prospects podcast. I'm Chris Peters for Cam Robinson. We'll see you next time.